So today I bring you the HP Pavilion G7, which the keyboard is not working. This is a computer that was left sort of abandoned in a friend's house, and she gave it to me to see if I could fix it. So if you have an abandoned PC just like this one and you still want to use it, let's see if we manage to fix this and make it work again. So let's start by opening up the computer. Firstly, we remove the battery, and then we need to remove this cover that holds under the peripherals like hard drive, RAM, etc. So with the screw removed and the cover lifted, let's then remove all the Phillips screws. They are sort of the same size, they're just one or two that are different sizes, but it's all written on this back cover of the computer. We now remove the hard drive just by pulling in on this little tab. It will disconnect from the motherboard, and then we just lift it so we can remove it safely. And to remove the Wi-Fi board, we just disconnect the two cables and remove the Phillips screw, and it will come out straight away. On this face we need to remove the keyboard, and we need to use a small driver to pull on it so we can then disconnect it from the body of the computer. Once we have a little gap, we can insert our fingers and start pulling along so it can come out safely without breaking. Once we've done so, we just need to lift this little tab on the connector. Now we examine the flex cable to see if there's any debris on it that will prevent it from working. Apparently everything is very clean here, and I remind you, this computer was never opened before. Let's continue to remove screws so we can then separate the top from the back covers. With the screws removed, let's disconnect these connectors so that when we pull, we don't rip anything apart. And now we close the computer, and then we can split the two halves from the body or the chassis, whichever you prefer to hear. So in this part, after you remove all the cables and all the screws and disconnect all the cables, we need to open the screen and pull this top part up so it can be separated from the bottom. So we will now search for shorts on this part where the keyboard is connected. For that we put the red probe on ground and we go through with our black probe on these capacitors that are connected directly to this connector to see if we find any shorts. The ground is inverted on these capacitors, so there is no short. So let's continue our search. These rectifiers, they present the same value on both gates, so these seem to be okay. And unfortunately there are no shorts on this area of the board, which means that our board is healthy. Let's reassemble and connect all these connectors and give power to the computer so we can check if there's any voltage going into the keyboard. So with the computer on but without a disk, we can press buttons to see if anything happens. It is asking to press F2 and F2 does absolutely nothing. So we still have an issue with the computer. So with the computer on, let's do some measurements on this connector and see what we got. So I'll put the multimeter here for you guys to see. Voltage DC, and let's go through the pins and check voltages. So most of the pins, they show 3.3 volts, which should be about right. And there's a part of this connector that has no voltage in several pins. As you can see here, 3 volts, 1 volt on this one, 3 volts again, and as soon as you start going up, they start losing voltages. So here, zoomed in, these are the pins that have no voltage at all, and we need to check each and every one of them to see why they don't have voltage. So let's do a small test. I'll press a few buttons to see if any of these receive power, and you cannot see the multimeter, but it is changing when I press some of the keys on the keyboard. So this apparently it's a normal thing. When you press the keys, they will be registered by voltage on these pins. So as I couldn't find any fault here, I was reading a forum, and apparently this is a common issue on these models of computer. So what they recommend to do is disconnect all the power sources and keep pressing the button for 1 minute, which I did on here. This is fast forward, so it's 2 times, and it will be 30 seconds on this video, but I actually pressed it for 1 long minute to see if this sorted the problem out. So now that I pressed, let's connect it to power and see if we manage to have the keyboard working again. So let's turn it on, and now I'm just going to turn the camera so you can see where I'm going to press. It's asking for F2, System Diagnostics. I press F2 and it worked. So there you go. If you have a computer like this that is abandoned on some shelf because the keyboard is not working, this is all you need to do. Fairly simple, isn't it? So in this case, this keyboard, I also tested it further and see that one line of keys is not registering, and the bottom arrow is also not registering. So I will eventually put a new keyboard on this one and give it some use. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you on the next video.